All right. That was mid-bite and I clicked the button. Hey everybody. Let me finish chewing. Very sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, sorry for the delay. My AirPods were out of battery and then this needed to update Ecamm Live and all sorts of things. So, forgive the delay. I try to be pretty punctual, but lots going on today in case you're following me on Twitter, or if you're not following me on Twitter, I guess I should say. Got the Vite converter, or Vite converter, sorry. I kept saying Vite and then Jess corrected me. It's Vite, means quick in French. Got that published this morning, got everything moved up. So yeah, just a very busy morning, Twitter, so forth like that. So anyway, let's check out the master branch. And it looks like I've got something weird going on here. So let's just get reset dash dash hard origin master. Whatever's on master is what's in production. So whatever happened to this machine, I don't care. So anyway, cool. Oh, lots of people joining live today. Awesome, thank you. Hey Bernard, Samuel, Sarab, how's it going, man? Duncan, just use a Vite converter, finishing up. Awesome. Yeah, like I said, it's a beta, but you know, when I put a beta out, like it works for my projects, you know, fully automated. So I feel like it's probably pretty good for most projects. I want to tweak some of the automation around like inertia and Vue and React, and Jess is kind of helping with those pieces. So we're going to pair up in the morning and finish making some of those tweaks. So I think probably by next Monday it'll be where I want it to be. So today, though, another big thing that I've been focusing on this week was the Workbench version 1 release. And this has been kind of a long time coming. It was mostly kind of a UI update. I think I have everything kind of the way I like it now. So I want to get back to focusing on automation. So let's go ahead and download this. But anyway, this is the Workbench. It's a desktop application built with Electron, Vue. So basically everything in here. It provides kind of like a quick and easy way to run things locally. You know, all the shift automation. So you know, you can run them a la carte though, which is really nice. So there's all these what we call tasks. There's over like 60 tasks now. Gosh, probably almost 70 now. But what I want to focus on today was there was one in here for like the null safe operator, and it kind of claims to convert these things to this. And I realized after publishing this version 1 or releasing version 1, this is actually a little bit of a false code snippet. It really only works with ternaries. So a real quick backstory, and then we'll get into the code. We built a lot of the free tasks initially off of Rector. And Rector is an open source tool in the PHP community that does all sorts of code refactors for really focused on PHP at large. But there's, over time, you know, there's been user contributions for like things to do Symfony and even things to do Laravel, just these little micro things. So I thought, oh, well, gosh, look, if they're doing all these like micro things and we're doing kind of the big stuff with Shift, like put these two together and we'll have like a really cool experience here with this Workbench app. Unfortunately, Rector, if you've used it, you know that it's a very, very technical tool. It takes a little bit to set up. You know, all that is to say it's a version 0. And as such, lots of things are changing. The configuration files are changing. Some of these tasks that they offer, or rectors that they call them, are being removed and changed. They're buggy. There's not a whole lot of quality control in there. It's getting better. So I hate to kind of be negative about it, but the point is the null safe operator was one of the Rector tasks that they actually unfortunately removed. So when I released version 1 of the Workbench, because I bumped the underlying Rector dependency, I lost this particular bit of automation. So I'm trying to bring it back to life, and that's what I want to do in today's stream. So let's close down the Workbench, and let's do a git checkout dash b null. I really want to focus on the ternary to null safe, and that's kind of what we're going to focus on today. So let's bring up PHP Storm. Let's look at the code that we have, and then I'm going to try to write some stuff to kind of fill in the gaps that Rector removed, but do so in a way that I feel is reliable. I'm not going to try to cover all the bases that maybe the original Rector did. I'm going to cover kind of, again, this ternary case, which I feel is something that's more accurate. Trying to find if statements that just compare null and then removing them or turning them into null safe is, you really don't get a lot of accuracy with that. It might work, and I think that's why Rector probably removed it. I remember reading some of their issues and PRs and discussions around the matter, and I just don't think you can reliably do that in all cases. So anyway, if we look under resources, we have these rectors, and again, we started using them, and then we kind of ran into all these problems. So some of these, again, use what's available. These are all freely available. They're just wrapped for a better experience, so you don't have to go figuring out how to install Rector, which again, if you've done before, is a pain. So anyway, what I've done is assimilate their old task or Rector into kind of our own class, and this is where I'm starting to kind of rebuild it. And I started the other day, and then I stopped because other things, and then I thought, okay, well this could be a good stream that gets into more of Shift. Although today is going to be a little bit more about Rector itself. So if you're interested in Rector, stick around, because we're going to basically write a custom Rector off the backs of some of the stuff that they had before. All right, another thing, I think I had a little snippet in here somewhere. Let's do local history, show history. This is going to be pretty nasty, but I think last week or even farther back, I had all this is going to be the Vite stuff, or Vite. I keep saying Vite. Let's go way back. Way back before the 8th or 28th. Here we go. There was something. I made a little snippet that I thought could help with all of this. Maybe you can show just certain changes. I don't know. These are all pest converter stuff. I'm trying to think. I probably did that a longer time ago than I'm thinking. Let's just make our own here. All right, so what I want to do is let's just touch an example.php file, because testing Rector, again, it's also a reason that's been unfortunate. It's incredibly difficult to kind of wire in this test case of it. I haven't figured out a good way just yet. So what I typically do is just make some little examples here that I would want to kind of pretend convert. So what we can do here is we can say something like A equals B, and then a ternary, and then so basically if B, then we could do B, prop or whatever, and then otherwise null. So we can do this a couple different ways. We can do something like if B is equal to null, then B prop, and then we could do something like if B is not equal to null. And let's just start with these and kind of see how these work out. So we'll just say B equals, it doesn't really matter here. We can just say null or 5. It really doesn't matter. Actually, it's not going to like that. Let's just leave B alone, shall we? And then we're going to need to fire up Docker, and we're going to have to run this with our own custom config file, and that's where it gets a little weird. So let's jump out to Rector PHP, and yeah, here we go. We're we're gonna get, oh, I hope Docker works on this machine. Like I said, I just upgraded to like the latest version. I guess Monterey. It's been a while. I don't use the iMac often. I just upgraded to Monterey, and I feel like Docker, of course, has like not been wanting to work since then, or it's hit or miss. So, if Docker doesn't work, this might be a very, very short stream. Come on, Docker, fingers crossed. So shift runner, let's see if Docker is going to let me in there or not. And then I don't know if I have Rector installed globally on this Docker image or not. Yeah, it's not looking like Docker is going to want to start up. Something about it's like, I think something with the defaults or something is not, it's not set when it upgraded. I'm tempted to just remove it and reinstall it. Let's give it just a second here. Yeah, it's definitely hanging. Alright, supposedly it's launched now. Let's try this again. Okay, cool, we're there. So, we could do composer require --dev. Let's get Rector first. So let's install Rector, because again, it's not necessarily a core requirement of Shift itself. It is on the box or the Workbench build that runs Shift. So then what we're going to do is, package is fixed. What? Let's just W that. Didn't even know I had PHP stan installed. I wonder what gives PHP stan as a dependency, because I don't have a direct one on it. Anyway, whatever. Let's let this finish, and then we should be able to run our Rector by name, I believe, and that's what we're trying to prove. And then we're going to start getting in the code and make this work with a couple more examples that I realized it didn't work with, and I think that it could. And again, I'm just trying to make this the best bit of automation it can be around that very, very tiny piece of like collapsing ternaries into the new null safe operator. So if we dump this out, and we can do a process dry run, and then I think it's config, and we would say resources rector, and what is our name of our special config? Adopt null safe operator. Null safe operator, and then I think we'll just say example.php. I think that's the proper command. So this will just be a dry run. Hopefully it runs Rector, and we see that it does, you know, some of the expected conversions that we kind of think for what we wrote. Oh, looks like I'm missing an extension. Hopefully that's okay. Come on, Rector, you are so slow. In fairness, that might be Docker. Thinking about it. Good gosh. There we go. All right, cool. Cool. Okay, so here we go. Here's the begin diff and the end diff. So here's what would have changed. Those null bits that we had would turn into this null safe operator. So this was all kind of out of the box that I pulled and pieced together from what Rector had in an earlier release. But now, as of .13 or whatever they're on, it doesn't work. So I think it's time for a new streaming machine. Yeah, this thing. I've heard good things about Docker on M1, but on the Apple M1 chips, but I haven't updated just yet. We'll see. It might be a Black Friday, Christmas kind of deal. So anyway, not is null. So I just want to prove that it's kind of not working for these other types of checks here. So let's do this, and let's do the dry run again, and we'll wait a minute for Rector to do its thing. But we'll go from there. It's really not the machine. It's a combination of the Docker IO, which again I probably just need to like remove and reinstall Docker. I've had this issue before, and a lot of the times it's just one of like the preference configurations inside of Docker that like didn't translate when I jumped OS versions. So I've found that like when I remove it and reinstall it, it's all fine. And then the other thing is, in fairness, while Rector is a cool tool, it is effing slow. It is super slow. It's another reason we just kind of started writing our own parsers. It sucks because again, it's a cool tool. It just has like terrible DX and not very high quality. It might work for your application, you know, and if it does, again, it's a great tool, but at scale, the scale of shift, you know, we're gonna try to run this on literally thousands, tens of thousands of Laravel applications. You start to see, you know, all these little edge cases that like, you know, just it doesn't cover, and you know, that kind of makes it worse because then you don't know what it really missed, right? Like that's what really makes these refactor things, it's that reliability. Even if it does less, but it does less at 100%, like that's what you want to go for, right? That's what Shift is after. I don't try to do like 100% of the automation for everything. If there's a known boundary case, I just comment on the PR like, hey, you might want to go check this. And maybe there was nothing to check, but you know what? It's better than like thinking you ran this and it does everything and it missed like all this stuff, and then you find that out like 6 months later, right? So, all right, either Docker died or Rector died or something. But take my word for it that these is null bits do not end up getting converted. Yeah, so it looks like Docker died. In fairness, so we'll try to restart Docker, but trust me that these bits do not work, and that's what I want to focus on here for just a little bit. All right. Okay, Docker, get out of my way. Okay, so let's kind of like go down the list of how this kind of works inside of this Rector bit here. So basically, it kind of shoots out different node types, and in this case, it says, hey, if you find any ternary nodes or ternary statements, then those are the types of things I want to process. So good. It kind of just gives us a little rule definition. This is required. It's really just the name of the task, if you will. So at a high level, what it does is it's going to say, kind of in a guard clause, it's going to look at the node, in which case it's a ternary, and it's going to say should skip ternary. And what it's doing kind of right away is it's saying, look, if it doesn't even return null or anything like that, so in this case, if it looked something like if b, you know, b prop or 5, well, this isn't an example for the null safe operator, right? It's not a situation where we would, you know, return null. It's returning 5. So that kind of rules out these types of things. So this is ruled out, just as an example. So all this works. And then next it says, look, if the condition part of the ternary is not an instance of identical or not identical. So what it's talking about here, and we saw this when we ran our own code, it did not change this first one because it's not a comparison for identical or not identical. So it's not a identical or not identical comparison or logical comparison. And then finally, it looks for like has null comparison, meaning that it makes sure that it's comparing null on one side or the other. Because again, if it was comparing like if b is 5, you know, it shouldn't end up converting that. And then finally, it makes sure that the else is, again, some kind of property or property fetch or method call, right? So long as those actually work, then, or all those tests pass, then this is something that we would want to end up converting. And I don't think we have to worry too much about the conversion part of it, because it's basically just saying, hey, if any of these are null, return null, otherwise process the expression, where it basically just figures out if it's a method call or a property fetch, and then turns it into a null safe bit, right? So it's pretty straightforward. So all of our logic that we need to do to kind of support these additional bits of logic here, and if you can think of any more in the chat, let me know, but I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, what if you do is null, what if you kind of have some other kind of maybe function call or comparison that we could also pack those down as well. Again, I want to do a slightly better job of those, and possibly even this one as well, right? Okay, anyway, so I think the logic we need to do is going to be right here, right? I think what we have to do is kind of keep this initial path, but then also add the path if it's a function call to is null, right? I think that kind of automatically counts. So maybe we could kind of just test that right away, right? So we could say, look, if it's an instance of identical or it's an instance of not identical, then go ahead and kind of let that work, right? Otherwise, it has to kind of have this directional bit. So, or well, this is should skip. So again, we could say like if it's condition's not an instance of identical, and it's not an instance of not identical, and it's not an instance of a function call, then we could go ahead and do that. Now the interesting thing is we want to make sure to get not null as well. So this is kind of why I want Docker to like come back to life, because I'd really like to see what type of nodes those are. I don't know what they are off the top of my head, so I'd really like to kind of see what type of node like ternary conditional is, right? So let's just see if Docker came back to life. It did, and let's see if it actually runs somewhat quickly. And we'll check the chat for any additional bits here. It must be a problem on your side. Yes, the I/O is definitely slow because of Docker, but it's not only Docker. Rector is slow if you attempt to run these things for the reasons that we're seeing right now. Like it's doing a lot of stuff. Like it's not a knock on it, so there's no reason to be defensive about it. It's just it does a lot of stuff. Look at this. It like recursively parses your entire tree. So even though that's only a really small thing, like there's a lot it's doing under the hood. So let's do a get class on this instead. Yeah, again, definitely Docker being slow, like for this part right here. But once it gets into that warning, like that's Docker taking it, or sorry, that's Rector taking its time. Okay, Rector is done. Well, you're not done. I asked you to show me a get class. Where's my get class? Oh, you know what? I remember this from before. I think it like dumps. I think it dumps its output somewhere else. This is the other thing about Rector. It's kind of random. Let's do an exit here. I think it does like output buffering or something that prevents, because they're kind of controlling the output to the screen. So I don't think you can just var dump and kind of see what you want or something. Or it's just claiming that there are none. Again, I don't know why suddenly it thinks that it's all good. These are all still in here. Let's comment these out and just maybe we'll get a little less here. Yeah, I don't know why it suddenly doesn't want to process these at all. Yeah, it's like it's not even hitting our line. Oh, there we go. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about with Rector, okay? So Adrian, get off my back. Look at this. We ran this 6 times. I changed no code, and it's dumping out this func call like later on. So maybe it wasn't getting low enough down there before I exited. You know, I don't know. But why did I have to run that so many times to only see this and throw in the exit? That's It's very strange. Okay, so this is a func call. That's good. So I think the one I want to focus on now, again, let's just help Rector along. Let's go back to this and just see what this last one is. So we want to check for func call. And this all just uses Nikic's PHP parser, which is what Shift uses, and that's what I'm most familiar with. And that's what I like kind of using directly. Again, Rector gives you a nice framework to do all these other bits, but at the expense of all these things. Okay, so it's a bool not. All right, cool. So let's do this. Let's say if you're not an instance of... Oh, isn't there something neat in PHP where you can say, like, not an instance of identical or not identical... Identical? Oh, indentical. Can you do this? Am I crazy? It looks like no. Yeah, you can't do it that way. I thought there was something added. Maybe it was an RFC that didn't get passed. I thought there was something where you could test against multiple instance ofs. Is it? No, it's not that. I'm getting crazy. Okay. If it's not an instance of identical and it's not an instance of ternary, let's just break this all the way down. And it's not ternary condition instance of expression call is what we said, or func call, and it's not ternary condition instance of not boolean, what was that called? Boolean not. Boolean not. Cool. Alright, let's format that, kind of. Alright, and let's move this down. So all these are guard clauses. So basically at this point we should hopefully still see our little var dump. And again, since in the absence of tests, this is just kind of how I'm going to play it out. I'm just going to keep running this hopefully with Docker being friendly to us, and we should hopefully keep seeing that, but we are not now. We are no longer seeing this boolean not. Okay, so if ternary is not an instance of identical, and it's not an instance of not identical, and it's not an instance of a function call, and it's not an instance of a boolean not. Okay, we are not getting there. That should be an instance of a boolean not, according to our recent dump. So let's see if we're getting in here. So echo, or just var dump. We'll say bailing. Alright, so we should see at least bailing here. If we're not seeing either, then again, very strange behavior. Sometimes it runs and sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, we're not seeing bail or or our get class ternary. Highly annoying. What do you think, Adrian? Is that my machine's fault? You still around? Let me know what you think. It's your condition. Oh, did I break it? Well, help me out. What's wrong with the condition? Isn't it well, if the condition doesn't pass, I mean, we should be getting in one or the other. It's only two pass. You're checking identical and not identical. Yeah, you have to remember this is should skip, so it's a negation of a negation. Yeah, it's a little mind bending, but it's basically saying if the conditional is not an identical check and a not identical check, so then if it's not any of those, right, then you'd have to bail. But even so, even if my logic was wrong, the point is it should either var dump this or var dump that, and it's var dumping nothing. So that's interesting to me. I mean, code's binary, right? It's either on or off. Where is it? Where's our var dump? Maybe we broke our example. No. Our example should still be there. Missing exit? Yeah, exactly. Maybe. Let's try. Exit. Whatever. Let's try it again. The wonderful world. This is, again, hate to keep going back to it, but this is why. Yeah, exit doesn't even seem to help. Okay, well, we're going to keep going because I feel like this logic is correct, because all we've really done, if we look at this, is appending these extra bits. Sure, I'll put it here just for giggles. Just for giggles, just to help you realize this. I've worked with this, okay, for like a year now. It's buggy. Yeah, it doesn't matter if the exit's there or not. It doesn't seem. It just sometimes it parses the file and sometimes it doesn't. Again, I've seen it behave this way. I don't have an explanation for it. We're just going to keep on trucking. Okay, so now we need to say, we basically would need to say that this has null comparison for the ternary condition needs to be a little bit smarter, right? Because this is really just taking not identical, or other things, right? So basically we would say it's going to take some of these additional bits here. So now we kind of have to get a bit smarter down here. So we would say has null comparison. All of these take this, which is kind of making me think. It's kind of making me think we don't want to mess with the existing methods, I feel like. Do we have multiple of these? No, it's really just this method. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to say, well, we'll just add to it. Why not? At this point, it should be one of these, right? So it should be not identical expression, and I'm just going to make this be the same ordered as above, just for a little symmetry, tiny bit of symmetry. All right, and let's put this back. We'll say if expression or check is instance of identical, I keep doing indentical, indentical, or check is an instance of not identical, then we would return this or this. And then in this case, we know that it's now going to be a function expression or Boolean. All right, so now we can basically say, we'll just return false by default here. So if it's one of the equality checks, whether it's equality or inequality, then it has to be checking null on the left or right side, right? So it's either a Yoda conditional or Yoda check, or whatever. So, or normal one, I suppose. So now we want to say if check is an instance of a func call, then we're basically going to return that the lowercase name of this thing basically is null, right? We would want to check that func call is null. So let's do that. So func call has a name and it takes arguments, but in this case we don't necessarily care about the arguments. So Haas, you're all over the place, man. We're like 30 minutes into the stream. We're deep in Rector land. And Rector land is very deep. Very deep. Okay, so we would say, we would have to also say return check name is an instance of name and check name, I think they have a two lower string, yeah, is equal to is null. All right, there we go. So that's how we would check that part of it. So it's basically saying this thing is a function call, and it has to be an instance of a name, and that name is null. So, and again, this is some inside information, but what that's testing for, what could end up happening is you could actually say something like func equals, because PHP is super dynamic, we could say like func equals this, and then we could say func, b, right? And this would not be a name token anymore. It would now become, a variable token, for example. So we don't necessarily want to try to do that because we don't have, all the static analysis behind us to do that. So we want to make sure that it's a name, meaning that it's, some form of this. And again, because PHP is crazy, we could write that. So that's why we're going to do the to lower string on it. So that's just a little inside information on like why or how some of this parser stuff works. And again, this piece of it is not necessarily Rector. This piece is Nikic's parser. All that Rector's really doing is giving us a bit of a framework around the tokens that it parses, and it does some pre-assembly of like common statements. So in this case, the ternary, it kind of weeds those out and filters those, but then it ultimately just gives you this callback where you have to return true or false of like, do you want to refactor this code or not? And if you do, then there's another callback for how that gets refactored. So it's pretty straightforward. Again, the framework of the wiring that it gives you is pretty nice, but do I want to spend all the time learning that and messing with it and kind of messing with its nuances here of the fact that we somehow can run this 12 times and only 5 of them it actually performs the way we expect? No, I don't. So anyway, let's finish fixing up writing proper PHP, and let's run this again. It's clearly running our file, but why is it not var dumping, what we would expect it to var dump? I don't know. Somebody who works on Rector could probably tell me. But the fact that I'm not getting a var dump or even an exit there is really just blowing my mind. It makes me think that these Rectors are kind of running on a separate process or something. Okay. But I feel like this logic is pretty good, so I'm gonna keep working here. We'll just put in another check now to say it's a Boolean not, and in this case, a Boolean not is gonna have an expression, and that expression needs to be a function call. So here's what we could do. We could actually do this. We could say, if it's an instance of Boolean not, if it's an instance of Boolean not, and if check expression is an instance of expression func call, then we could actually set check equal to this thing's expression. Otherwise, we would return false. So we could say not, return false, and then let it kind of play on, right? Yeah. I like this. Again, in the absence of testing, it's hard for me to kind of demonstrate this to you, and in the absence of being able to see var dumps, it's very annoying. We'll see here, but for some reason it's exiting before we get to where we want to get. So I'm gonna drop all those var dumps and exits here in a minute, and we'll see what happens. Let's recap this, because I think when this is done, we're honestly probably pretty close to being done. So what we're after here is we kept the original code, hopefully, intact by saying that if it's an equality check, then one of the sides of that check, the left or the right side, needs to be null, right? If it's a Boolean check, then we could see that the expression is a function call. If it's not, go ahead and return, because that Boolean not's doing something that we don't care about. For example, it could be doing something like, not B, right? So that's one we can just avoid. But if it is, then go ahead and just kind of pack it down and allow it to fall through to the next check. use the expression that's underneath, and then we can check that expression just like we would anything else. Make sure it's a function call. We know that it is. And then we would check that it's using, again, a name, and it's is null. So that should get us a little bit farther. Let's drop out any var dumps and exits. We don't have any anymore. So there's nothing here that should be preventing this code from running any further. So let's just do something like echo here with the PHP EOL. So we should see that we're getting in here at least once or twice. And again, if this doesn't even print these echo statements, then we'll kind of skip trying to run it, and we'll just kind of code it blind for another 10 or 15 minutes. I'll see if I can figure out. Again, I'm pretty sure it's output buffering. My guess is Rector does this underneath. Could not process. Oh, okay, cool. So it actually is going a little bit deeper into the code. It is getting here. But now the problem is it's calling one of these lower methods to make sure that what's being referenced is being used. So let's go deeper down the rabbit hole a little bit. Frake did a PR to Rector to only work with Ray. Okay. All right, so we passed this now, and now we're on this indirect usage bit. And the indirect usage, oh, okay, it tries to determine the object that we would want to pass down. Let's see where this conditional is being used. It's just being used here, left and right. Is left and right being used anywhere else? Whoops, wrong button. Okay, so I think all we need to do is just, let's roll this up. And what this is really going to be, instead of the conditional, is we're just going to call it object. We don't know what object is. It's really just a node, right? Let's just make it a node to keep with the type hinting. So what we're going to have to do now is, if we've gotten this far, we need to kind of recreate object here. And the object is this. So what we're trying to do here is take out the left or the right side of what this is to determine the object. And then it's basically going to say, hey, is the object you're comparing to the one that you would expect to have been you know, in the proper spot, right? So, for example, if we were comparing like C, but we were referencing B, that would not get collapsed because those are two completely different checks. So it's making sure that whatever object we're checking here is the same object that we're accessing either a property or a method on. So we need to kind of do that for all of our 4 different types of tokens now. So I think I'm just going to write a little helper method that says something like this, you know, extract object ternary condition. Let's take this. All right. And let's borrow this method because it's going to be pretty darn close. So let me borrow this. Yeah, part of me thinks I could just have it have this not return true or false and instead return the object. But that's okay. Let's keep it separate for now. So let's pack this down, and we'll say if, I don't know why we need these ternary, or I don't know why we need this. Let's call this check, and we'll return this. Right and left. What's wrong with it? Oh, it's a bool. Let me get my bit out of the way here. Ecamm Live is in my way. Let's get rid of the type hint return. And now what's wrong with you? Check right, check left. All right, let's pack these down because this is kind of silly. And I think you can do this. There we go. All right, so let's inline those. Okay, so we know that if it's identical or not identical, one of those equality checks, then we're just going to keep that same logic that we had before. Otherwise, again, if it's a Boolean not, at this point, if it's a Boolean not, we know that it's the thing that we care about. So we would just say check equals that. And now we would need to extract the parameter or the argument that's in is null, because we know it's is null. So here we would just return check args or get args. Can you get a specific argument? I always forget. Call like get raw args. No, I don't want that. Yeah, there's nothing in expression. It's just a... Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's a func call. Let's get back to the func call. The func call has args. Can you get a specific argument? Get raw args? Call like? What do you give us? Give us something call like. Is first class callable get args? No, you can just get the args. There's nothing fancy about it. Okay, fair enough. So we'll just say args then. 0. So basically what we're saying is not has null comparison. This is extract, what do we call this? Extract object. Okay, so extract object is going to get the conditional check. If it's an equality check, then it's going to figure out which side to pull, the left or the right. That was all code that existed before. We just packed it down without the temporary variables. And now we're going to say if it's a Boolean not, again, we've already determined at this point that it's a function call. So if it's a Boolean not, we just jump right down to the expression. And now we simply pull out that very first argument that's passed to the function call. So looking at our example code to kind of go through this, what we're talking about here is basically saying, again, this hardest example is the Boolean not. We're going to take this whole expression, we're going to pluck out just the is null expression part of it, and then we're going to take its first arg. And now that's the object, and that's going to get compared to this. And so long as those are the same object, according to PHP parser or rector, then we're good to go. So we should be able to run this again, and with any luck, that's actually as far as we need to go, because at this point everything's should be passed down. Although the refactor might be a little bit wrong. So let's see where we land here. Hopefully we get past the error. And again, we'll wait on everything. Okay, cool. So yeah, look, here we go. Hey, it packed it down exactly the way we wanted it to pack down. So let's uncomment our other things and make sure that we didn't break anything in the process. And then just to kind of prove, proves that we didn't again mess up anything else. We'll just say something like C is B, right? So it's going to say is null C, but actually reference B. So those two objects are not the same, and therefore that should not get collapsed to a ternary operator. So let's run this again. We should see all these, and we should have those 4 middle lines being green. And if so, then we've accomplished what we wanted in the face of Docker being totally annoying and Rector being a little confusing. Fingers crossed. Here we go. Drum roll. All right, cool. So it did exactly what we wanted. So we have, you know what? I wouldn't go so far as to say it did exactly what we wanted. Oh no, it did. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong line here. Yeah, okay, so all these get packed down to their top argument is the point. It really doesn't matter what the expression is anymore, because again, the null safe operator is just going to handle returning null as it should. So we're just going to kind of take those and run with it. So yeah, if B is not null, then B prop. That's the one that's actually throwing me off. If B is not null, then B prop. If B is null, let's just flip one of these real quick. It's playing with my mind real fast. What if you did if b is not null, then return null, but b prop? I'm assuming this is that else condition, again, making sure that it's actually returning null in the appropriate place. So let's just run this one more time. I'm curious what it does in this like double negated scenario. It should just leave it alone, but it might not. Let's see. Drum roll. Rector, show me something. Rector 19. Yeah, see, that's interesting to me that it parsed that down. If b is not null, then return null, otherwise return b prop. See, I think that's a logical bug that existed in Rector before. That actually shouldn't be the way it is, because that's the else statement. It's actually saying when b is null, then reference its property, which is, in fairness, it's really odd code. This code kind of logically doesn't make sense to me. It would throw a PHP error. Like, I just don't know why you would write that code. But the fact that Rector's kind of blindly packing that down makes me a little bit nervous. I'm going to leave it. Again, that was code that kind of existed, and I don't think it's code that you would write in the wild, but it's kind of weird. You should flip the right and left side in the negated ternaries in the example. Yeah, Tibber, I think we're on the same page here. I think I just did what you were talking about, where I kind of flipped those to see if it still collapsed at the third one here, 1, 2, 3, and it did. And again, while that code is not logically correct, I think it should have left it alone. So that might be something I'll work on off stream. Again, that this existed kind of before the code that I've added, again, which is why Rector might have removed this particular task. It was pretty buggy. But I don't think there's a whole lot of harm in dropping that for now. That's probably what the user intended for it to be. But yeah, it's not logically equivalent. So if you caught that, good job, because that was kind of messing with my mind too when I was looking at it a minute ago. All right. Well, with that, let's shut down Docker. Thank goodness. Let's do a git add-p and kind of take a look at what we did here. So we don't want to add Rector to our dependencies. It's not built in here. Let's kind of review some of the code that we did here. We'll do some smaller hunks, if you will, or chunks. So again, we're checking for more of the object types. So yes, these are more of the allowed things that we would want to pack down. I'm going to get rid of that comment, so we're going to say no. And here we're extracting the object instead of just passing in the ternary conditional. So here's our indirect usage on else. So that's kind of interesting. Again, maybe something was lost in translation here. I think this method should probably do something a bit smarter, right? It should probably say, like, if you're a conditional, or if you're not a check, then you need to be in the else, right? If you're a truthy check, then you would need to be in the truthy part of the ternary. So I think this is where I would probably go in and kind of try to add some more logic. But for now, it's doing, what we thought, right? So we're going to say yes here. I think the logical correctness of example is correct. Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think that's a very fair example. So I think I'm gonna roll with it for now. But I do think that has else method is where we would want to look to kind of clean some things up. So I think the gripe that we're both making is this particular line, where it's like b is not equal to null, then return null. Otherwise return the b property. That's just bad code. So I don't think that's a very fair bit. But there's the argument to be made that when you're refactoring something, again, we shouldn't make assumptions about the code you intended to write. We just have to look at the code that you have. And this doesn't necessarily throw any kind of syntax error. It would only throw a runtime error when you tried to reference B property here on the else. But again, we're not trying to fix runtime errors. That's PHP Stan's job. That's other things where they can kind of do some static analysis on what you're trying to do. That's why these tools all exist. All these various tools exist, right? There's a place for all of them. So I think it should probably avoid this one. I'm going to work on that a little bit offline, given kind of the slowness with Docker and Rector and everything else. But I think this was good, and I think it did achieve what we wanted, which were these two. It did not do this one, which again is another kind of logical boundary case where we're checking null on something else than we're accessing. So I will continue to work on this, I think, because again, I would want to avoid it, but I think this is good enough and better than it was to go ahead and push out and update the workbench. And that way I'm not removing anything with version 1, because right now, technically, if you tried to run that null safe operator, it's not going to do the things you would expect it to do, or all it could do. So that's why I wanted to clean this up. I got some more ideas for some things to build in the future. Again, moving away from Rector. This was just the one piece that was lost when I upgraded to version 1. I'm not really using Rector anymore as a foundation for stuff. Again, for all the reasons I griped about in this stream. It's a very cool tool if you want to try it out yourself. If you want to contribute to it, by all means. And we actually have, Jess and I both have contributed to the project. But given that Shift is my primary focus, I can't really spend the time to go through kind of all of this stuff. I can't get my head around it. My head's already full of Shift and how I use it. So I'll continue to just use PHP parser, Nixx parser directly, which is really all this is doing underneath anyway. So there you have it. Thanks for joining live and bearing with the Docker slowness and Rector oddities. Hopefully you learned something, and see you all next Wednesday.